So good evening, everyone, and I hope you're all safe and well. And a big thank you for joining us all from around Australia for this webinar on the important issue of mental health in the workplace. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Stuart Charity. I'm the CEO of the AAAA, and I'll also be the MC of tonight's session. And we have a fantastic lineup of speakers and panelists for you this evening. And I'll be talking about what's really happening with Australia's mental health and what we can do to best manage it for businesses large and small. Our featured presentation tonight will be from Michael O'Hanlon, Workplace Engagement Manager at Beyond Blue. Michael will share the latest trends and insights and helpful strategies from one of the most highly regarded mental health organisations in Australia, and from his own significant experience working in the mental health field. Michael will then be joined by Aileen Hayes, Executive General Manager, People and Culture at GPC Asia Pacific, and Alison Lang, Executive General Manager, Human Resources at Bapcor, for a panel discussion and to answer your questions. Both Alison and Aileen will provide examples and insights from workshops, as well as automotive retail and distribution worksites across Australia, from their significant experience in leading people and HR functions in diverse businesses over many years. And we really are privileged to have representatives from the two largest companies in our industry with us this evening. While many people may understand the impact of what the workplace can have on people's mental health, and conversely, how mental health issues can impact on performance, productivity, and relationships at work, many business managers and team leaders don't have the tools, strategies, or confidence to best manage mental health issues and create a mentally healthy workplace. There's now also heightened uncertainty about the impact that COVID-19 has had on people's mental health more generally. The media is sharing confusing messages about this. It's hard to know what's true and what's not, particularly when everyone's COVID-19 experience is so different and depends on where they live and work and what's happening in their life more generally. But what we do know is that COVID-19 has tested how well prepared businesses and managers are to support their staff and colleagues to be mentally healthy. The pandemic has thrust us all into a shared challenge where we've had to increase our awareness of the signs of mental health illness to ensure that our teams survive, thrive, and strengthen for future success. Organisations like Beyond Blue and Lifeline have experienced a significant increase in calls over the past few months, which really does lend it or indicate that people are really struggling to deal with the increased stress and pressures that are in our lives at the moment. So tonight's webinar is designed to give you those practical tools to help yourself, help your staff, your colleagues, and your family. Promoting good mental health helps us all to remain resilient and productive during these challenging times. It's also become a key element of providing a safe and healthy workplace and in retaining and attracting talented and productive staff. We want this session tonight to be interactive, to give you the chance to ask questions of our panel of expert speakers who are here to help. So please don't be shy about asking questions when we reach the Q&A session tonight. Just before we do kick off with that, I did want to run through a few housekeeping points. The agenda for tonight is we'll shortly start off with a presentation from Michael O'Hanlon, which will go for around 25 minutes, and then we'll bring in our panellists, Aileen and Alison, for a 30-minute interactive Q&A session, and we'll finish up at 7 o'clock. For those of you that have participated in our webinars previously, you'll know the drill. Due to the numbers that come online, we're not able to activate microphones of attendees, so any questions that you would like addressed during the Q&A session should be lodged via the Q&A button. If you move your cursor around, it'll come up, it'll either be at the bottom or the top of your screen. And finally, we'll be sending all participants tonight a link to Michael's presentation, as well as a video recording of this session. And that'll be emailed to you over the next day or two. So without further ado, it's my great pleasure to introduce Michael O'Hanlon from Beyond Blue to kick off proceedings. Michael.
Thank you, Stuart, and thank you for the opportunity to be with you all tonight to present to you a topic that, as Stuart has said very well, is important to the industry and to all Australians as well. I hope you can all see my screen at the moment. And what I want to do is, excuse me, go through the presentation and highlight some of the opportunities, the challenges that exist within mental health within the workplace, but also to talk to some of the opportunities that small businesses have with respect to looking after their staff and looking after others around them. So let's start off with, always like to start off with, what is good mental health? And it's often thought of as confused with mental illness, whereas in this case, what I'm talking about is a broader definition of mental health as being a positive state where everyone experiences good, positive, like mental fitness, and mental health conditions are a separate part of that. And if we can have a look, oops, sorry, wrong slide, there we go. If we have a look at this quick definition from the World Health Organization, you can see that it's defined as a state of well-being in which individuals realize their own abilities, cope with the normal stresses of life, and can work productively, fruitfully, and able to make a contribution to their community. So you can see there's no mention of mental health conditions. It's about coping with the normal stresses of life, working productively. And that's what I'd like you to keep in mind when I mention the word mental health tonight. So another way of thinking about it is a spectrum where we're green and healthy, and then under stress, we move into an amber space where we're struggling. And if we know how to look after ourselves, we can move back to the green. If we don't, we could end up with a mental health condition. But it's not static. Everybody moves up and down this spectrum. Everybody, every week, through different things impacting on them. And at the moment, clearly, the pandemic is the big impact on everybody. So if you can remember that everyone's mental health changing is a normal facet of life, but we all have an opportunity to support each other and support ourselves. So what's this got to do with my business is something we often hear, well, okay, I run a business, what's mental health got to do with it? Well, first of all, there are lots of benefits, and this is the success part of a mentally healthy workplace. Yes, they promote mental health and well-being. They are more productive and get every best out of everyone in the workplace. And there's lots of evidence to show that a mentally healthy workplace is an employer of choice, that workers want to work with organisations with those characteristics, and hence they attract and keep top talent in their business. And there's lots of research that highlights that a mentally healthy workplace is also better for the bottom line of a business, in that it's more higher productive staff, and that the absenteeism and presenteeism are reduced. Absenteeism are not at work, presenteeism at work, but are not particularly focused on the work I'm doing. So clearly there are lots of benefits in a mentally healthy workplace. There's the legislative obligations, and I'm not going to go into those tonight, but clearly under the work health and safety regs, there is the obligation to eliminate and minimise risks, and that applies to mental health risks, not just physical risks. So an audit should be looking for mental health risks. You need to be aware of the Disability and Discrimination Act, which obliges employers that if I was to disclose to you that I was experiencing a mental health condition, that you need to make reasonably practical adjustments. And reasonably practical adjustments is legal term for adjustments that don't drive your business out of business. We can talk about that a lot, but we're not here to focus on legislative obligations. Privacy, you need to be across the obligations around disclosing personal information, in that you're not allowed to disclose unless if I'm the one talking to you, give you permission, and you can disclose what we agree on at that time. And bullying is something I think we hear a lot about, and there's legislation covering that as well. So that's why it's important, but many small businesses owners, and I'm focusing on small business at the moment, but this is equally applicable to large businesses, But I want to talk to small businesses because this topic comes across as something that, well, how can I approach this? It's too big for me. It's too hard. What can I do in a small business? I don't have all the resources I need that a large business has. I don't have a HR department. So I'll focus on small business, but in principle, it's exactly the same for larger businesses. So what do we know about small businesses? 97% of them are sole operators and small businesses. You can see the numbers there. 2.3 million businesses, the percentage split between sole, micro and small. But now we start to look at almost half the Australian workforce is employed in small businesses. So the impact that small businesses has on the mental health of Australians is quite significant when you look at that 4.7 million people employed in those small businesses. And we did some surveys a little while back that highlighted that 23% of micro business owners reported a high level of psychological distress. 25% of small business owners reported a high level of psychological distress. And sole operators, 36%, reported a high level of psychological distress. Now, these figures were before, these are from last year, so they're well before the pandemic arrived and added the psychological distress that we're all experiencing currently. Mental health, the part of it being success or failure is that it's an integral part of any business plan. If you think of your most important asset in a small business, it's the business owner, it's the person running the business and your staff. So it needs to be part of your business continuity planning. What happens if you, as the owner of your business, is unwell and can't be at work? What's your strategy? What's your plan about that? What's your risk management strategy? How are you going to manage your people? If you've got a small business of 5 people and 1 is away, and that's the average, so about 1 in 5 Australian workers will be experiencing poor mental health at any one time. It's 20% of your staff away. So you need to have strategies around continuity, risk management, and people management to 1, ensure your business survival, and 2, ensure your business success. So integrating this into business planning is a very important aspect. What we've done at Beyond Blue is provide a range of resources for small businesses, and this is one of them. And I've provided a copy of the PDF of this document to the association, so it should come out to you with my presentation. But it gives you it's a little one-stop PDF around the impact of mental health and well-being in small businesses. You can see the spectrum I spoke to before. Gives you guidance around speaking with someone you're concerned about. And at the top up here are all interactive links that take you to areas of Beyond Blue websites that give you more information around having those conversations. Signs and symptoms and knowing what they are and how to respond is an important aspect for each of us individually and for supporting our workers. And again, looking at the spectrum I spoke to earlier, here it lists some of the personal signs if an individual's here and heading into the amber, how this might display in behaviours at work, and a whole list of actions that you can take that are relevant to either yourself or a colleague you would see at work. And on the interactive PDF, all these blue are links that will take you to information around each of these topics. And you can see it goes down through the same pieces of information if you're in the amber area or if you're in the red space where you are experiencing a mental health condition. So it's a great one-stop resource for those that kind of information. It goes on to provide solutions for small business owners in terms of implementing solutions, what to do at work. Some great resources and links here in that we're all typically really good at doing planned maintenance on plant and equipment. So I bring my car in to some of your members for its regular maintenance to prevent issues happening. Well, why don't we apply that to ourselves? What do we do regularly to look after our mental health and physical health? And here is a link to a personal well-being plan, which takes you through some steps of what are the kind of stresses in my life that I know impact on my mental health. These are the triggers. What changes in my behavior when those triggers are impacting on me? What can I do when I or someone else notices those triggers impacting on me? And then it goes on to talk about, so who can I talk to? What are some of the fallback options I have in my business if I need to take some time out? Who takes my place? How do I manage that? How do I discuss it with my clients? So this is a great personal preventative maintenance plan. And this is a link to a workplace wellbeing plan for an overall looking at staff and colleagues, everyone in the business. And this is again going back to the spectrum and finding some great external links that relate to each of the areas of the spectrum. So as I said, you'll get a copy of this PDF. It's interactive, and I really encourage you to spend some time exploring that. Today, actually, it's very fortunate the webinar is on today. We have just released today a series of 4 free online courses for business advisors. And you might think, oh, so hang on, what am I talking about business advisors for? Well, so many small businesses rely on information and support from the association, from accountants and lawyers and OH&S specialists. And those people are often going into businesses and they will see the changes in either the business owner or the staff. And it can happen with sales and marketing people going into businesses as well. So if they are themselves aware of how they can reach out and support small businesses, that's a fantastic avenue for keeping the industry well and ticking over these days. So the 4 areas are an introduction to mental health and how to recognize, looking at those signs and symptoms again. Importantly, how advisors can look after their own well-being, because if it's the old put your own oxygen mask on in an aeroplane before you put it on in somebody else. So if you don't look after yourself, you can't look after anybody else. How to have that conversation with a small business owner that you're concerned about, and how they can proactively support small business owners. So it's kind of like a version of that previous document I showed you for those that are interacting with a business. And my sense is there'll be lots of ways some of the major suppliers and others in the business and the association might be able to take on this training. As I said, it's free, it's online, and use it to beef up your own skills and resources. I said I'd have a look at the impact of COVID-19 on mental health. And one of the important things about when we think about this is, yes, it's impacting everybody. We're in the same storm, but we're in different boats. So what the hell is Michael on about? Well, even if you just think each of the states around Australia, we're all being impacted by the pandemic. Victoria are under lockdown, can't go more than 5 kilometres. Only 2 of us can go shopping now, a whole raft of different things. WA, when I talk to people there, they're out having coffee, doing all the things I can't do, but they're still in the pandemic storm. And even within each state, even within Victoria, you've got the larger businesses, look at the aircraft carrier at the back, lots of resources, they're ploughing through the storm. And then you've got the little guys down here in the canoe trying to survive. And we're all in different places, both from our own, what business we're operating, whether we're regional or metropolitan, how our staff are. So same storm, but different boats. So when you think about reaching out to others, remember what may not be impacting on you may well be impacting on others that you, in your own business or others you interact with. I think we know what the business impact of COVID-19, it's pretty clear, it's on cash flow, changing work processes, things going online, not being able to ship things interstate as easy, logistics supply lines being challenged, Victoria being under lockdown today. But my guess is this virus could shift around and any of us could be under lockdown at any time until we find a vaccine, hopefully. Government support, what's happening to it? What's happening to JobKeeper? All of these variables are impacting on a business. They are actually threatening fundamentally, in many cases, businesses' survival. So it clearly has an impact on businesses. And each of these things impact on a business owner or a staff member's mental health. Work loss or underwork, you know more about this than I do, but the impact is quite significant. And I think this quote on the right here is so, in many ways, powerful that it's once where people are losing their jobs for no reason of anything to do with their performance or good, bad, or indifferent. It's a pandemic, it's impacting everybody. So this is a really different impact on individuals' mental health. It's raising the stress and moving people into that amber part of the spectrum, which without support, the risk is they'll move into the red. So it's looking at the impact of Beyond Blue, and this is how I thought I could talk to how it's impacting the community more broadly. So what we've seen is since the coronavirus began in March and these are to the end of August dates, how volumes to all our support services have upped about 50%. So 40 to 60% higher than last year. So clearly the community is under stress and is reaching out for support. Interestingly, there's been a 16% increase in contact to the same support services from males aged 25 to 54. And I highlight this because that's the demographic that is typically under stress from mental health conditions. It has the highest prevalence rates of mental health conditions. It's where suicides peak statistically. But now we're seeing an increase in reaching out from those men, and men typically, being very stereotypical to all the guys listening, we typically don't do that. So something's clearly going on. And if we look at this age group and demographic, they're typically talking about anxiety, depression, family and relationships, then themselves, and then the community. 6% of them are reporting a medium to high risk of suicide, and 95% were ringing about themselves rather than contacting on behalf of somebody else, which is often a way that men will, I'm just calling about a buddy who I'm concerned about, but they're being very upfront at the moment. So that's the kind of impact we're seeing. And a lot of this is due to things like social isolation, uncertainty, all of which are peaking at this point in time. Now, I want to go through some resources that are available to us as individuals, as well as some you might refer to others in your family and friends and colleagues at work. So first of all, it's this recognizing the signs that someone may be experiencing a mental health condition or high levels of mental stress. And you can see these are the kind of changes physically, from a feeling perspective, thinking, cognitively, and behaviors. And if you are, or you sense somebody's experiencing these kind of shifts over about more than 2-week period, they need to go see their GP as a starting point, because that is not normal. We all lose sleep at some stage. We all lose confidence at some stage, but these happening over a period of time, combined with these other factors, may indicate that something's going on from a mental health perspective. So the first thing is understanding those. Secondly, financial well-being is so critical to our own personal well-being and our family's well-being. And it's something that Beyond Blue is working with the Financial Counsellors Association of Australia, and we've launched a campaign with them. And here you can see, if you go to that web link that's here, you'll see all this information that's available to you. So the National Debt Helpline to start with, which will point you to where you can get a financial counsellor, explanations, some examples of it, how to be money smart, financial survival guide for COVID-19. So it is a big source of stress, but there is a lot of free help out there. So making it known is an important opportunity for all of us. Beyond Blue has developed a coronavirus mental wellbeing support service, independent of our normal support service. So this is specifically for people who are experiencing increased mental stress related to the coronavirus pandemic. It's both a 24/7 call center. You can see the number up here. There are online forums that are available 24/7 themed around this topic. And there is also on the website, which you can see here, the link to it, a whole raft of information around advice and strategies and links to suicide and crisis support services. To give you some ideas of what's available, on the website, this is on this link where it talks about impacts on my work. And yes, it talks about essential services and educators, but here for people working from home. And these links on the website are all interactive, where you can get information about work-life balance, for transitioning back to work, managing back to work anxiety, and for business owners and managers, practical tips for running a small business, helping your employees at this time, mental health strategies coping with COVID-19. So there's a raft of information here, quite specific to COVID-19 and workplace mental health. So that's all I want to talk to today, was to give you a quick overview of what's happening and what resources are available. As I said, you will get a copy of the presentation in the PDF, and you will also get the PDF of 2 resources that I've touched on today. So I hope that's been helpful. There's a lot of information there, but now I think the opportunity is to hand it back to yourselves and look at what questions you may have. And we've got 2 great representatives of your industry here, Eileen and Alison, that will be able to provide some real on-the-ground support in addition to what I can provide. So I'm going to stop sharing and hand back to Stuart now.
Thank you, Michael. Fantastic presentation full of information and great resources there. I think some of the statistics that you quoted there are pretty confronting. 50% increase in call volumes is extraordinary, and organisations like yours are really doing heavy lifting to support our community. So thank you for that, and thanks very much for your presentation tonight. So now's the Q&A part of the evening, and it's great to be able to bring both Eileen and Alison into the session. So Alison heads up HR and for Bapcor, and Eileen heads up HR and culture for GPC Asia Pacific, so the 2 largest companies in our organisation. This is just a reminder that this is now the time to put your questions forward to all panellists. To do that, just go to the Q&A button and type in your questions, and we'll throw those. They can be directed to all panellists or to a particular panellist. Just while we're waiting for those questions to come through, I might kick off and ask both Alison and Eileen to give a bit of an overview of some of the specific initiatives that they're doing within their organisations and some of the issues that they're confronting, and whether those are any of those are industry specific. So Alison, we might kick off with you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Stuart, and thank you to everyone for dialing in and joining the webinar. I hope you find the conversation valuable this evening. So in terms of some of the things that we're finding across the Bapcor group, and you will know that we have businesses both large and small, and interestingly, it does relate to a lot of what Michael has spoken of. So we're definitely seeing a sense of heightened anxiety across our teams, just a general feeling of being more anxious. That can be pre-pandemic, but certainly since the pandemic, that has increased. What I would say is at the start of this, people were concerned they were going to get sick. Was my family going to get sick? That to some extent has reduced, and I think that now has taken us to a place of uncertainty about the future, and that is causing anxiety for many of us and many of our team. We're also seeing a sense of people really feeling quite overwhelmed. And again, Michael touched on this, and I think we have a real dichotomy in society at the moment. So we've got many people who aren't working for different reasons. They might have lost their job, they might be stood down, and that brings a sense of being overwhelmed. But for those people that are working, probably feel that they're working harder than ever and taking on more than they ever have before. And one of the words that we're using in our business quite a lot is this sense of fatigue. And that's fatigue about facing into the challenges of the pandemic, and albeit that mightn't be directly about mental health, what we see that it does is that sense of being tired can really lead to a loss of resilience or less resilience, and bouncing back from when things perhaps quite don't go to plan as we would hope. And again, many of the issues that we sometimes see around mental health for our teams are about relationships and family. And again, Michael touched on that a little bit as well. We're actually now seeing that play out in different ways during the pandemic. So people are facing many different demands to what they had previously. So whether that's homeschooling, different logistics, different planning, some people are feeling very isolated from family and friends. Now, we're fortunate that we have strategies in place, that we haven't seen a real escalation of those things, but they are absolutely there. I think, Stuart, the second part of the question was, do I think those things are unique to our industry? I actually don't. I think these are social challenges, these are societal challenges at the moment, and with mental health more broadly, even when we're not in a pandemic, but they're playing out even more during COVID. And particularly for businesses like ours and the industry like ours, it might play out differently with different demographics. So again, are our teams, are those we work with comfortable to come forward and put their hand up and say, actually, I'm not okay, I need some help? And how can we support people to do that? I think the really great news out of that, and tonight's an example of that, is we're getting better at that. That understanding of it's okay not to be okay, to use that phrase, is absolutely increasing, and conversations like this tonight can only help with that. Thanks, Stuart.
Thanks, Alison. Aileen, I'll put the same question to you. So if you can talk about some of the issues that you're confronting at GPC, but also some of the initiatives that you're driving through the organisation and out to your customer base.
Yeah, and I'd like to reiterate, thank you so much, Michael, for the presentation. It was very useful, and I'm sure the participants on the webinar will find that very informative. I think to answer your question, Stuart, very similar themes to what Alison has described. I think we have an employee assistance program, and we receive high-level statistics, obviously, from the provider in relation to that program. And we know that the small number of team members that are accessing that service, and we really promoted that through COVID, 45% are seeking support because they think they might have a mental health issue. So what's great is they're not sure, but they're taking the right steps to reach out to get the help they need to help them navigate, whether they need additional support, they're feeling depressed, or they're experiencing anxiety. And certainly if you bolt on, particularly here in Victoria, the extended lockdown, we're also seeing people really feeling that sense of being isolated, not just those working from home, but also those going into work. We're coming home after work, they're still feeling reasonably isolated, and are reaching out really openly to us as a business to help them stay connected. And I've got some programs that we've certainly put in place that we can talk through as questions arise to describe how we're managing some of those issues. And in terms of, are we seeing anything different in the industry? I agree with Alison, really no different, I think, from what we're seeing in society. Very similar themes. It's just the way that we choose to manage it, if you like, that hopefully is going to be the dial turner for our team.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Aileen. I might put a question to you, Michael. Have you got advice on how to best start and have a conversation with someone that you suspect might be struggling with mental health issues?
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. I think the best way to go about is to have it as an informal conversation. So what I would start that conversation is, if I'm observing, if I can just use you for a moment, Stuart, as an example, if I was noticing changes in Stuart's behaviour, normally on time for work, working late at night or working through, joining us for lunch, and then suddenly Stuart's less punctual, leaving early, not joining the team. Clear changes in Stuart's behaviour that may be a mental health condition, may not be a mental health condition, but it's changes in his behaviour. So it's the opportunity for me to have that informal chat with Stuart over a coffee somewhere that's comfortable, and just say, Stuart, I've noticed some changes and just wanted to check in. Is everything running okay? And if not, I went through something similar, if you have, and that this is the kind of things I did. So the important point in what I've just described is I have owned my observations. I've said nothing about Stuart as, I think you might have a mental health condition. I've tried not to put you on the defensive at all, but I'm opening a conversation as I would with a mate, someone I know. And hopefully that will start the conversation off. So the key points are the setting, knowing the boundaries, not wanting to necessarily solve the problem, come in over the top. It's very much that empathetic listening, hearing them talk, and then knowing how to signpost people to get the help and support they may need. A lot of that's explained in that PDF document and on the Beyond the Heads Up website, which is the Beyond Blue Mental Health in the Workplace website. But that's the kind of broad thing. The way I talk to a Stuart is, I'm sure that everybody in the audience, that if I left work on Friday and strolled out, skipping along, and walked in Monday limping, big change in physical behaviour, someone would say to me, oh, what have you done? And I might say, well, playing soccer with the kids, look, I just bruised my ankle, and I show the bruised ankle. And you may say, well, hang on, I did something like that, and it was actually a torn ligament. You might like to see a GP. It's that same conversation, but in a different context. And as a society, understandably, we've been reluctant to do that. But I think now is the opportunity when, yes, we're all in the same storm, but in different boats, to reach out and do that.
Excellent, thanks. Great advice there. We have some audience questions through now, so thank you very much, and keep those coming. First one from Stephen Sorensen. A lot of larger companies have employee assistance programs, or EAPs, which allow access to professional help for their employees and their families. Is there a similar program for smaller businesses, say less than 10 employees, can access their staff? Throw that to anyone that wants to have a go at that one.
Well, perhaps I'll be an advocate for you, Michael. Absolutely. So Beyond Blue, if you go to the website, there's a 24-hour call hotline that you can phone to get advice for your team, and it's all free. There's a chat function. I can't remember the hours, Michael, off the top of my head, but I know there's specified hours that the chat function operates, and all the tools that Michael went through. So really being able to provide those resources to your team. You don't need a fully funded EAP program. That advice, free advice and support, is actually available through Beyond Blue.
And I think to add to that, and it's a really key point for this discussion tonight, there are lots of resources out there for businesses large and small. So yes, perhaps we have the benefit of being able to have an employee assistance program, but whether it's through Beyond Blue, whether it's through organisations like Lifeline, something that many people don't know is encouraging someone to go and visit their GP and have a conversation about perhaps developing a mental health plan, which allows up to 10 funded sessions a calendar year. And at the moment, and Michael, help me out if I don't have the details correct, for those locations that are locked down, there's a potential of an extra 10 sessions. So for me, one of the really key messages to share tonight and a little bit around tips and tools is there's lots of resources out there for you and your teams and your families to access.
And I think it's interesting, it's almost the opposite to what you might think. Large organisations, and I've worked in large organisations, you don't know everybody, it's people come and go. An EAP provides you, if you like, with an anonymous way to get help and support. A small business has this magical ability. If you're only 5 or 10 people, you know each other. You're typically from broadly the same geographic area. So you've got a sense of connection and the magic possibility of just being open around these conversations, simply because of the small size. So it's almost ironic that small businesses in many ways are better placed to do this than large businesses who may rely on an EAP. So it's just horses for courses. There are EAPs that notionally offer services for small businesses, but I'd suggest you may not need it if you take advantage of the scale and size of your business.
And Michael, I think that's a really good point, and it connects into something you were saying earlier. And I think it should be a feature of large businesses as well as small businesses, knowing your team, knowing the people that you work with every day, staying connected, being interested. So when those changes do occur, you notice the change and you can then have the conversation from there. That if there's one takeaway from me, and it's a really simple one, it's about knowing your team and staying connected with your team and then accessing the resources that are available.
Excellent. Thank you all. It's some great tips there, and you don't have to have an expensive EAP program to support your staff. There are a huge amount of resources out there. Next question from Michelle Kittle. Alison and Aileen, I'm interested to know how you're managing to rally your troops and help to lift spirits. Have you implemented any preventative measures that you weren't using prior to 2020? What are you now doing differently? So, Aileen, maybe you first.
Yeah, thank you. We certainly have raised our awareness since COVID, I think, but there's a number of things we're doing. I think to Alison's point, we've reminded our team how to actually, or trained our team, if you like, how to actually respond to someone with mental health. And we use a concept called the 3 R's. So recognizing when someone needs support if they're acting differently from how they normally would, responding, so initiating that conversation, and then referring. So recognize, respond, refer, and that's referring them to the available resources. But in addition to that, we've also implemented training for our teams. Now, we have gone through various organisations for that training, so resilience training, but we have leveraged the available resources again that are through Beyond Blue, but also the Black Dog Institute, which is another one that people may be familiar with. We've also done a couple of programs for our individuals in Victoria called Staying Connected. So Staying Connected provided those working from home. We have quite a large support office in Melbourne with the ability to stay connected with the business through all sorts of activities like a book club, you know, theme days on Fridays. There was a lunchtime yoga on Wednesdays for those that could attend, innovation toolkits. And these were really inexpensive, very quick ways to just make people feel like if they needed to, they could connect. And I think the final thing that we did, which was perhaps a little different from what we've done previously, is we took the concept of Are You OK Day and made that a 5-week program. And part of that program again was raising awareness, so providing our team with information about how to recognise a mental health issue and some statistics similar to what Michael did today, where to go for support. We also had some of our team who were really open about their mental health issues and shared that with the broader business. So recognising again, being a larger business, that we were able to get that video out across all our smaller brands, and they recognise that people they work alongside every day who actually appear on the face of things perhaps very normal were underneath indicating, look, I've got a mental health issue, but this is how the business has supported me, and that went a long way. So those are probably the main things that we've done, is really amplifying our focus, awareness and support.
Excellent. Thanks, Eileen. Alison, did you want to have a go at that one?
Yeah, and interestingly, there's some very similar concepts and even similar partners that we're working with. So I wouldn't say that COVID or the year that has been 2020 so far has fundamentally changed our approach to mental health for our team, because for us it's really based in our values and supporting each other and supporting our teams. But it has made us amplify things in a very different way. So even more communication, even more listening, taking every opportunity to promote our employee assistance program, making sure that we're tapping into our network of mental health first aiders. For some planning that had been happening for some time prior to COVID, coincidentally, we launched a Wellbeing program during COVID, and that is about wellbeing generally, and it actually speaks to a much more holistic approach. So not just mental health, but we're thinking of it in 4 pillars. So mental, physical, social or community, and also financial health and wellness. Obviously, we've really ramped up the mental health piece during this time. Again, we're partnering with the Black Dog Institute. So that's brought online training for all of our team members, and a slightly different content of training for our people leaders about being able to notice those signs, have some of these conversations. And that's been really well taken up and well thought of across the business. The other piece that we've done as well, and it's Are You OK Day, and that's something that we've supported as a business for a number of years, because it is such a simple yet powerful approach. But what COVID and restrictions and lockdown have caused us to do is actually go about Are You OK Day in a different way. So our networks, our sites have traditionally supported that, and have supported that again this year. But we would also do something like, at our larger sites, have a guest speaker come in to share their stories, have some of our team share their experiences. What we did this year was something just like this. We actually ran a couple of webinars and Zooms, and what perhaps an unintended positive consequence of that was it actually opened that conversation up to many more people. So similar things, but just a slightly different approach with some of it.
Excellent, thank you. And Michael, I might go to you. Is anything that you want to add there?
Just listening to both Eileen and Alison, in many ways what they've reflected is they've ramped up their existing programs. So COVID is just another risk potentially to the mental health of the staff, and they've ramped things up, which to me highlights how important mental health, or well-being, as Alison said, they're intimately integrated, is to your business planning. It goes back to that. It is part of your risk management. It is part of your contingency planning. It is part of your people management. And here it is just coming out as, well, we've got a challenge, here's the response. So I think that was something that struck me. And both have talked about the power of what is sometimes called lived experience. In a large company, it's easy to do, I agree, where if someone is open to talking about their own personal experience, it is so powerful. It's much more powerful than anything I can say, because it's a peer talking. And as I think Eileen said, that the power of that, and seeing somebody saying they're managing a mental health condition and, oh, they look pretty normal. That's the whole point. This is exactly breaking down the stigma and normalizing things. So I think that's great to hear. And touching on social isolation is also so important in this point in time, because that's a known risk factor for poor mental health. And right now, particularly in Victoria at the moment, that is high on the agenda. So really great to hear what both have said.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you all. I think one of the real positives that has come out of this COVID-19 situation, particularly here in Victoria, but all around Australia, is that people are more willing to talk about it. It's far more acceptable subject to talk about. And even though there are a lot of things going on in the background, I think this has really brought it to the fore, and hopefully it's disseminating down into those smaller businesses as well. It's not, mental health and wellbeing and mentally healthy workplaces isn't just the domain of those large corporates. It should be part of every single workplace, no matter how large or small. So thank you for that. Another question, which I think is a good one, and it'll be interesting to see or contrast potentially some of the statistics that Michael provided. The staff who have asked for support at GPC and Bapcor, are there different trends between males and females and younger and older staff or other segment types? So, Aileen, I might throw to you first on this one. Are you seeing any trends in the people that are reaching out for help within your business?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. And probably the answer is no. It's actually really been surprising the number of people that have reached out that you probably wouldn't expect. And it kind of goes back to the statistics that Michael provided around males and that sort of 25 to, I think it was 40-year age group, which makes up a fair number of our team members, are probably reaching out more and feeling as though they can, based on all the work that we've done, than perhaps what they would have prior. So that's been really encouraging to see. We have had some of our female team members really struggling with juggling children, working from home, particularly again, if I come back to Victoria, but also in some of the other areas that were in lockdown. That's something that's really come about as well. But no, it really is for us. It could be anybody. It's across the board, but we've certainly seen a bit of an increase in that male population age group.
Alison?
Very similar for us. So we have seen an increase in the uptake of our EAP program, but reflective of our demographic anyway. So would be a very similar cohort of more male team members and in that age bracket. So it doesn't fall into a specific gender split or age split beyond our natural demographic as an organisation. I think again those points around, it's not even just the conversations that we know people are having with EAP that comes back in our reporting and our statistics. It's also the feedback that we get, obviously respecting people's privacy, but about some of the sorts of conversations that are happening and some of the discussions that we as an HR team and our people leaders get involved in, whether that is the challenges of home learning, whether it is the challenges of isolation, whether it is I'm just over this and tired, and that again, there's no particular pattern other than fairly well split across our standard demographic.
Thank you. And Michael, those statistics that you did talk about earlier regarding the high risk demographic of males between, I think it was 24 and 54. That's pretty well a fair chunk of the demographic of our wider industry. It is a very male-dominated industry, and as we know, males are not as inclined to reach out for help. So that's good to see. Is there anything you want to add there from a trend point of view?
It just goes back to that analogy that I made, that I've heard both Alison and Aileen talk about, that we're all in the storm, different boats. So different demographics may need different things, as Aileen said. Mothers or females coping with children homeschooling, they have very different needs to someone perhaps like myself. The kids are off running their own shows and it's just my wife and I. So it's probably social isolation in a sense. Or the dog's here, so that makes it all right. But so that's what I would suggest. It's reflecting. But it's great to hear that it's across the spectrum and the stigma is broken down to the point where people are reaching out. And I think that is this, we're all in the storm this time. It can't be, oh, that's their problem. It's our problem this time. So I think that's really a great outcome, actually.
Excellent. We've got time for one final question, and that is, I'll do a bit of a whip around. If you can give us, each of you, your 3 top tips for business owners and managers to create a mentally healthy workplace. Alison, I'll start off with you this time.
Yeah, and look, I think we've touched on a lot of the themes already. So the top tips from my perspective is you don't have to be the expert. Certainly, perhaps with the exception of Michael, but I'm not a trained psychologist. I've spent my whole career in HR. I really care about people in our teams, but I'm not specifically clinically trained around this. So you don't have to be the expert. Know your team. Know what I'm loath to use the term normal looks like, but what you would typically expect from someone, and therefore, when there's a change in that there has been some sort of change. And take that opportunity to reach out, to ask, to listen. So I'm going to go with 4, so my apologies, and know what resources you can tap into. And some of that we've spoken about tonight. Hopefully that's one of the key takeaways, whether it's Beyond Blue, whether it's Lifeline, Black Dog Institute.
Excellent, thank you. And Aileen?
Thanks, Alison. Those are great tips, but I'll try to touch on a couple of others that will expand on that. I think raising awareness of mental health conditions, normalising it and reducing the stigma. So talk about it, and look, you're on this webinar right now. One of the things that you could do is go back to your team and say, hey, I attended a webinar last night. It was really interesting, couple of interesting stats that came out. Let's talk about it. Print a couple of the articles off Beyond Blue, put them in the lunchroom, and that just gets people talking about it and feeling as though it's a normal environment where they can bring up their challenges. Provide training and advice to your team on how to tackle conversations. Yes, Alison's absolutely right. You don't need to know the answers, but at least being able to know how to get people to open up and engage and then refer them to professionals is really important. And then the final tip would be to embrace mental health awareness events such as Are You OK Day. Encourage your team to get involved, dress up in yellow and black for the day, print off posters, and make your team aware again that it's a safe environment to talk about their challenges. So those would be my 3 additional.
Excellent, thank you. That's fantastic. And Michael, we might finish off with you.
It's hard to top those. We covered about everything that's there. One thing I'd say is talk to your peers. You're not alone in that sense. The small business next door or your competitor down the road, they're having the same challenges. Talk to them, find out what they're doing. What have they done that's worked? What have they done that's not worked? Peer support and swapping ideas is so powerful. The normalising, I think, is absolutely important. There's lots of numbers. 46% of Australians will experience a mental health condition at some time in their life. So what are we worried about it for? 3 million at one particular time are experiencing depression and anxiety. So it's so common that normalising it is important. And I agree, there are now so many resources out there that you don't need to be the expert. The challenge is finding the good evidence-based resources, and both Alison and Aileen have mentioned some of those tonight. And I just suggest, in terms of following up Are You OK Day, October the 10th is World Mental Health Day, and the week from October 10 to October 17 is Mental Health Week in Australia. And in each of your states, there's lots of activities happening that you can point to, link to, webinars, all sorts of stuff. So there's another way of normalising the topic. So that'd be my few tips. Yes, thank you.
Excellent, thanks so much. And thanks to the 3 of you for your contributions tonight, sharing your experience, your insights and your tips. I think I've certainly got a lot out of it as a manager, and Michael will certainly be leveraging that business advisor training as well. I think that'll be really important for our team to be putting those messages out, because we're reaching collectively thousands of businesses, and Aileen and Alison have got even bigger customer bases, predominantly small businesses through the trade. So yeah, I think there's some really great resources. But thank you all for your fantastic contribution. It is a really, really important topic, and it's one that we do need to discuss more. We need to share experiences, insights, and tips, and really and really normalise what, as you say, Michael, quite correctly, is a very normal thing at the moment, that most Australians at some point or another will find that they're struggling during their lifetime. So thank you all very much for your contribution tonight. The presentation pack that we'll be circulating from Michael does have contact details for Beyond Blue, and we encourage anyone on the audience that has identified someone that may be experiencing some issues, particularly urgent issues. There's helplines, there's other support there. So all of those resources and contacts are in the Beyond Blue pack. And finally, I just wanted to thank everyone, all of our members that are on this webinar this evening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting the AAAA, and thanks for your great questions. I think it has really been a good interactive discussion, and there were some really great questions coming through. Our team at the AAAA have been working tirelessly, and I'm really proud of our team, the way that they've really responded to what has been a pretty tough year for everyone. We've got a huge amount of resources and information and tips on a whole range of areas on our website, AAAA.com.au. There's a specific section on COVID-19. So if you haven't had a look at that website yet, I'd suggest that you do, because there'll be information that I think will be very valuable for your business. We also have our team at ILG, Industry Legal Group, that can help with any workplace management issues or legal issues that you might be confronting. That's a free of charge service. Their number is 1300 369 703. So I'll wrap it up there to say thank you again for your participation. Thanks to our speakers tonight. Stay safe and have a great evening. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you.